Hey, welcome everyone back to another episode of the SharpTails podcast. I'm Wade Kisner. My co-host Thomas he's off tonight. He was guiding a hunt earlier today, but he'll be back with us next week. And so tonight I'm going to fly a little bit solo here, and we'll get some things accomplished hopefully. Again tonight, the episode is sponsored by Kinetic Performance Dog Food in Highland Hideaway Hunting in Riverside, Iowa. And if you get a chance, check those two sponsors out. They could probably help your dog's nutrition. And if you ever want to get into some birds at the Highland Preserve, check it out. And you might see Thomas and I down there at some point, or if you get a chance to hunt with us as well. A couple quick things I wanted to mention tonight. We have a new feature that you're going to be seeing here soon. We call it passing shots. And essentially, it's an opportunity for all of you out there to, to submit us questions that you might want us to answer. Could be about dog training issues. It could be about our dogs, our background, our history, anything that you would like a little more detail on. Send those questions to us. And you can send those in to... SharpTails at protonmail.com, and make sure you, on the subject line, you just put passing shots, and that way when they come in, we'll make sure they get with the category, and we'll get some of those questions together, and we'll have an episode where we answer those and discuss them in a little more detail than we get a chance to most nights on the podcast. And speaking of podcasts, it's kind of interesting. When we started doing this, started listening to a lot of other podcasts that are similar regarding upland and hunting and dogs, and we were able to always learn something. And what we try to do is also share information back and forth from some of our other colleagues that are doing the same thing we are. And our guest tonight is one of those individuals, and he's been doing a podcast for a while, a little longer than we have. And it's been fun kind of sharing some information with him. And we have Brian Mays, and we'll bring Brian on. Brian is the host of the Amaazen Outdoors Podcast, and we're welcome to have you on tonight.
Hey, Wade, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. It's always interesting reversing the roles of these things once in a while. And talk about learning something. We've had a little bit of saga to get this thing put together here. We'll just say that. And I definitely, I was just looking around before you started the recording button here, and I'm like, do I have my notebook around? Because I've got a few things I need to jot down. It's always a learning curve with this stuff, and I appreciate you guys extending the hand and having me on the show.
No, we enjoy it, and you have a really interesting story, and we've spoken on the phone a couple times for full disclosure, but and we've shared information about dogs and our passion for upland hunting and that kind of thing. And obviously, I'm quite a bit older than you are, and so we kind of talk in those generational things of, how you guys approach upland hunting versus the journey, I guess, that I've made over the last 50 some years of chasing dogs, and obviously my co-host Thomas isn't here tonight, but he usually fills that role for me. He kind of keeps me like, hey, you're an old guy, and here's what's happening in the present world, and so it's kind of good that way. But
well, hey, you old guys have a lot to. I hate that term too, because I like to look at people of your age or people older than myself as a wealth of knowledge. And I'm sorry, the phrase "you can't keep or teach an old dog new tricks" isn't a bad thing. There's things that work in life, and sometimes today's world we tend to get a little too complicated. So yeah. I admire some of the things, and I'm reading old books right now. There's a lot to be learned there, and so don't take that for granted. You need to tell Thomas that this age over here doesn't come without lessons that you can learn there, young man.
see, I knew there was a reason I liked you. I knew there was a reason, and you're right. We have a lot of scars, and we've learned a lot of things, and one of the things hopefully we'll discuss a little bit tonight is my latest journey into GPS stuff, and for a
Sure.
guy of my years, most and even myself, I just said, I don't need that. I'll go with what I'm used to, and make it work. But it's there are a couple things happened that caused me to want to, from a dog safety issue, to think that I need to learn this stuff and apply it, and hopefully I can be better at what I do, whether it's guiding or whether it's just personally hunting with my dogs. But that's a whole nother story. But it does bridge that generational thing of, it's probably and probably Thomas was one of those persons that encouraged me to get into that world, and obviously it certainly was a lot easier for him to learn it than it was for me. But we're getting there. We're getting there. So
Yeah, you won't see many bells on my dogs. I'll put it to you that way.
yeah, yeah. Actually, I hunt with a gentleman that still has bells on his dogs, and the only challenge that you have to that when you get to be my age, and even with the audible collars that I use that send out a locate signal, is as long as your hearing is intact, and after all the years of firearms going off and everything else, when that diminishes, then you kind of have to look for something else, and that GPS is a good fit for that, and but it also is challenging. It's a little bit, you got to really put the research and the time in to learn it. So
Yeah, that it's just another thing you got to carry, another thing that's got to work, and all of those challenges, which, to be honest, a bell always usually works, and
yeah,
very,
yeah,
very rarely does a bell fail. But again, you got to be able to hear it, and yeah, I've got some of those challenges I struggle with too, because I want to protect my hearing, but I haven't found as a guide, I'm listening for the dog running, not necessarily
right,
at point, and I can't hear everything I've tried. I can't hear those little subtle differences, and I haven't stepped up to the amplified stuff that protects your ears yet, because it's coin, and
yeah. I
but
haven't
but
either.
it's one of those things where my uncle is, if he doesn't have his hearing aids on, boy, oh boy, you better make sure you got water around, and you'll be yelling. Everybody in the county knows what you're telling them. So, yeah, it's a challenge, and especially when you start talking about dogs and the way you want to run them, because it gets very personal.
Yeah. Well, let's dig a little more into what you've got going up there right now. And I know that from our previous conversations that you kind of left the corporate world some time ago, and
Tried
now
to as much as possible.
and now are making a go of living in the great outdoors, and there are very few people that get a chance to do that, for a living, and you've kind of done that. At least you're in that transition to do that, and so. What's that been like? That switch, or that kind of I mean, there had to be a point where you went, I got to do it. I just got to do it, and
Oh,
and hope for the
absolutely.
best.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody listens to my podcast, I don't necessarily recommend from an audio pleasure or like a listening ship pleasure. Don't listen to episode 1, but the title of episode 1 is like hitting the go button, or going. Having to. When do you start? You just have to go at some point. And I kind of took that to heart when I started the podcast and the guide business. The previous career had kind of run its course in my life. The passion to get up every day and do what I was doing for the net ROI on my time, and the things that I had lost, and kids growing up, and you just don't get that stuff back. So as you kind of get to that middle-aged life crisis, some guys wait till 50 and buy a Ferrari. I decided I didn't really like the numbers game on retirement, and some of the things that I wanted to accomplish in life, climbing up mountains, chasing birds, and being 70 years old. Usually, the way I've rid my body probably ain't going to work. So I had to look, and I'm one of these guys that has very lucky. I married in a wife that understands my addictions in life, and understands that I have an addictive personality, and I've used the outdoors to kind of be a tool in life to keep me on a straight and narrow. And so she's never really kind of objected. When I sat down with her when we were first dating, I went through the calendar. I said, it's ice fishing, and I ice fished back then. But I mean, January to December, this is what's going on. You're not going to change me. So either come along or, this probably ain't going to work. And, so I said it pretty clear from the beginning. But, as any good marriage, it's all about compromise. And after, I think 17 years we've been together now. Not married 17, but, been dating and whatnot for 17 years. I wouldn't be able to do what I did without my wife, and having a plan, being able to plan together. We had kids my stepkids that were a little older. So I've got my youngest is truly an adult at this point. So I saw empty nesting kind of coming on the horizon, and just the stars aligned, and it was like, either you take the chance now, and if you fail, you fail. I've got skill sets and things that I can fall back on. Hell, I'll go work at the hardware store if I have to keep the dream alive. But at the end of the day, you've got a few things in life that culminate in wanting to do this. You need physical ability, and I just saw, I don't know, what is it, 67 average retirement age, 78 average, life expectancy. And I watch my family at that age, and, literally they make decisions based on, hey, I can't do that anymore. And I didn't want that to be in my future. So I figured, well, what the hell, let's go. And it's been tough. I mean, the biggest thing, I guess, the biggest challenge, you do this because you enjoy what you do, and you want to share that passion with other people, and build that fire of whatever it is that you're doing inside other people, so that you kind of pass it on, more or less. I think that's really at the kind of the true heart of intentions with good guides and good people who want to recreate with other folks.
Well, that's yeah, and like I said, that's tremendous in the sense that not many people.
We'll see if I can make it through the third season. This is make or break. I got to really draw an income this year. But at the end of the day, when else are you going to get the opportunity to do it? And I can always fall back.
Well, there you go. Things. So all our listeners out there, if you need a good guide, then we've got one here, and he's in he's got all the rough edges knocked off over the last 2 seasons. So now he's got it down now he's ready to go. But well,
we got a short hair that wants to make an appearance on the podcast here.
There you go. Well,
normally she doesn't come down.
There you go. Well, that's a good omen. I think that is, whenever we have a dog that comes into a studio shot, I take that as a good omen. That this,
as long as she doesn't get too needy, we're all right.
There you go. So on a day-to-day basis, I know that during the summer and you're doing fishing, you're kind of take some people out fishing up there. And now we talking Minnesota, Wisconsin, or both areas kind of, or
much like birds, I mean, the rivers fluctuate. So bird numbers fluctuate. Some areas, have heavily logged in certain areas for rough grouse. So there's a certain time frame when that particular stand of woods might be excellent. And there's, a couple years where it might not be. I typically guide right on the border. So the St. Croix River is kind of one of the headwaters for the Mississippi. And there's a lot of different smaller rivers that feed into the St. Croix. So kind of that watershed is really home base for me. But Western Wisconsin is definitely in the Rolodex of a lot of years of experience. As you start to get north and further west into Minnesota, I do get out on the Mississippi a little bit, but north of the Twin Cities. So I go where motorboats can't go. So I have a drift boat, and we try to seek some of the untamed places where you're not going to run across jet skis and just the standard affair that you see on some of the busier lakes.
Now, when you're hunting grouse up there, I assume that's mainly grouse. That's
grouse and woodcock.
Okay. Is that public ground up there, state ground, or is that private, or a combination of both? Is that what you hunt mostly?
So it's a mix. It's definitely a mix. We've got some really great programs here in the upper Midwest where we've got tracts of land that are managed forest cropland. Some of that's open, some of that you need permission to hunt. There's county forest, there's state land, there's federal land, and about a dozen other tax forfeit land stuff, different programs that open it up to public hunting. Um, you know, our county forest land tends, at least in Wisconsin, tends to be a little bit more logged heavily due to it is a profit and revenue generation for the county versus the feds tend to leave the land, and the national forest is not logged nearly as much. So there's different varying degrees of property and kind of where grouse are in high numbers and where they're moderate and sometimes where they don't exist at all. There's definitely pockets of very good bird habitat, and then there's areas that have moderate habitat, and you get further south. I don't know it's a tough thing, I guess, with logging because grouse and woodcock have depend heavily on young successional forest, and that requires people to cut down trees. Well, when you cut down a tree that's 100 years old, you're forced to have this. Um, it's looking to leave a legacy on the landscape because if you're going to harvest that tree, you're obviously going to plant a tree. Well, wait, if you plant a tree now, you'll never see the shade of that tree.
All right.
You just won't. So there's this impact that happens, people who log off their lands or whatnot. You've got a beautiful stand of oak trees in, say, the driftless area of southeastern Wisconsin or southwest Wisconsin. Um, that landscape is forever changed in your lifetime. It's not going to be a stand of oak trees that are 150 years old in your lifetime ever again. And that's a tough thing for people to grasp, especially when you look at it from a conservation element, because people are looking at, well, I'm going to conserve this landscape. And now I come in and I raped it because I took all the timber off of it and, it looks different. And I can see both sides. I have a hard time cutting down certain trees because, they're beautiful.
Sure.
And but
Absolutely.
at the same time, that forest has to be opened up for that next generation of trees and for the next generation of bird hunters up here too. So it's one of those things. We hunt a lot of different properties and different ownerships, and things like Onyx and these other hunting apps really help us do today. It's just amazing. I don't know that I could do my job without it. I have a bunch of old plot books back here, and you have
Now
to
you
go to
can
the
just-
county office every damn year to get it, because if not, you might not be the same ownership on that book. So things have changed quite a bit, and that's opened up a lot of different access to different types of properties.
during a given week during the grouse season, how many of those days are you with clients typically when you're out hunting?
So the first year, not a lot. I tell you to try to find and reach out to these grouse hunters that, yeah, and this is the thing with upland hunting too. There's a huge do-it-yourself proponent and element to the upland space. I mean, it's not that difficult to grab your dog, get in the truck, and drive to a new state. The license fees are low. To go out and give this a shot, isn't like a commitment to, say, elk hunting in Colorado or Montana. You can come back bruised and kicked up and beaten and probably still have enough money in the change jar to go back next weekend and try it again. Where, with elk hunting and other things and seasons, you just don't get that luxury. So to reach out to grouse hunters and actually get them to book with me the first season was difficult. I'd say I was out probably 2 days a week that season with customers, and then some key people to kind of help promote the business. Last season was a lot busier, which kind of led me to kind of structure things a little bit differently. I was out about 3 days a week with customers, and then I really, really, truly am in this business not to take people's money. I mean, that's not my goal. My goal is to go hunting and show people a good time, and really show them the awesome little parts of Wisconsin and Minnesota that hopefully get them hooked forever. I mean, that's the goal. If you come back and hunt with me, great. But if you come back and spend your money in Wisconsin or Minnesota every fall, I'm happy, because my sport's probably going to continue to grow then. But regardless, this year it looks like we'll probably have a little bit more on the calendar, and that's good, because that means I might have a fourth season.
Good. So I mean, we of course we do guided hunts at a preserve here in Iowa, which is and it can vary the number of. We have a kind of a minimum or a maximum that we'll take in the field at one time. You don't want to get too many people. I like the smaller groups myself, but
Yep. I cater to small groups.
I just think
that's
it's
really...
it's more personal. I think you can.
Yep.
spend more time, discussing and kind of telling them what's going on, what the dogs are doing, answer a lot of questions. Where if you get a big group of people, you can't really do that. But I'm assuming grouse hunting is kind of built for almost like I can't see you having 4 or 5 people all
No.
out there at one time.
I've tried. And yeah, it doesn't work out really well. It's ideal. Honestly, my pricing and the way I try to structure things is really lend to 1 or 2 people. If you've got 3 people in your group, call me. Maybe there's something we can work out. But ideally, I want to be in the woods with 1 to 2 people at a time, plus myself and a dog. I typically only like to run 1 dog in the grouse woods. You have to be quiet and stealthy out in the pheasant field and stuff like that. But when you haven't gotten any moisture in a week and you've got to walk on freshly dried out leaves through the whole entire woods, the more people, the bigger the train, it sounds like. And you already sound like a freight train with 2 or 3 guys and a dog coming through the woods. So it's one of those things. I like to give my clients the best opportunity I know
Sure.
how to give them. And the more people, the less opportunity you have to shoot, the more noise we're making. And the birds just start to play less. They don't want to play nice at some point. And it gets difficult with 1 guy and a dog sometimes when, especially these last couple of years, we've been very dry where these birds, last year, I've seen grouse run like pheasant more than I saw them hold up in certain areas.
I was going to ask you about how if they have a tendency to move on the ground like a pheasant or even quail will move quite a bit on the ground. Grouse are the same way, depending on.
Up until last season, I would have said, no, they hold tight. Last year, I had never seen so many grouse run, 50, 100 yards.
Wow.
And it was kind of, again, more situational and locational to some of that. But they do run. They will relocate. They hear you coming. They're going to head for something thicker to sit and hold up in. It's just like any other game bird. Most of the time, grouse will play a little nicer, especially the younger birds. The old birds, they're old for a reason.
That's
And
right.
yeah, they've learned. They've been through a few of these. They're probably picking a little lead out of their, what. So grouse are so cool because they're one of those birds that they're just always on. There's an unpredictable element to them. You're in an area where you can't see that far, so the flush is pretty intense and unpredictable, and the bird itself and the way they interact with you and the dog and the cover is ever changing and ever kind of unpredictable to a certain degree. There's things that you can kind of bank on in the grouse woods, but I would say out of a lot of birds that I've hunted, grouse are one of the birds that have humbled me the most. You think you got them figured out, and they slap you with a backhand.
So obviously, when your dog obviously makes contact with a bird, it seems like what you do up there in those woods is the positioning has to be like as a guide trying to get your client in the right spot, to get a shot. That probably is one of the biggest challenges, I would think.
So I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, all right, so this is a game of moving from pocket to pocket. So you're walking through the woods, you've got your shotgun here, and you're going like this to get through this cover, right? You can't shoot in that stuff. You just can't. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can pull your gun up and fire off a shot, but unless that bird's in that window, you're never going to hit it. You can't swing your gun. So I always tell my clients to look for openings or pockets. And when you get to that pocket, you don't have to necessarily like stop and look around in that, but hesitate for a moment, locate the next pocket, start working towards that pocket. Always be putting yourself in an opportunity or a position where you can shoot. Because if you don't, you'll never shoot. And when it comes to, positioning on birds and points, some of that is, it gets difficult. You got obstacles in the way, and not every obstacle is the same. It's not like out on the prairie where, hey, Larry, we got a point over here. Why don't you swing around? There could be a strip of pine trees that, Larry can't get through, number one. Number two, he can't see. So positioning's very kind of key, and you have to really understand your dog. I've got, I've worked with some dogs that will actually turn their head and almost point to you where that wind position is or where that bird is. I've got other dogs that just catch that wind and they hold up rock solid, and the bird could be, 30, 40 yards out. So and I've got other dogs that just run right into the bird too. So it's hard to really answer that question with an honest, hey, this is how it is. But at the end of the day, reading your dog and then understanding your clients and trying to work with them to put that puzzle together and give them opportunities, it's a challenge sometimes, but it's a lot of fun. And I find that it's those moments where I can kind of make some assertive, hey, if you keep doing this, you're gonna drive to success, or why, you weren't really in position on that one, and what could you do differently, and working with the clients to really drive a different outcome throughout the day or maybe a couple days and really see that success rate go up. That's when, gratification for the job is all there all the time. And I don't know, that to me, those are the moments that I really love the most, is to see somebody come into camp and then leave and feel like they could go step and repeat this on their own.
And we do the same thing with clients in the pheasant world as well. And I, anymore, of course, like you, we don't carry a shotgun because we've got other things on our mind and trying to stay safe with a shotgun. I can't imagine going through the brush and stuff that you do. Try to
very rarely
shoot,
you've got to tempt me all day long, and you got to make me feel like my shooting's better than yours, and that's a tall task sometimes.
But I'm like you, the gratification comes from seeing someone through your coaching, your mentoring, and your dog work being able to harvest that first rooster or whatever it is, and you hope, as you said, that's set to hook, that now they've experienced that, they experienced hunting over a dog, and now they can't wait to come back and do it again. And then, we kind of figure we've done our job, and when you get to be where I am in my upland hunting career, you hope that we're leaving people behind us that are getting into the sport and want to carry on, what we have and our passion for it. And so when we see those days, they're really gratifying. So I noticed
planting seeds,
there
seeds,
you go.
Man.
I noticed over your right shoulder there, you have a pretty cool mount. It's
this guy?
It's a SharpTail, looks like.
Oh no, that's it's a prairie chicken.
Oh, prairie chicken. Okay.
Yeah, so that was the first prairie chicken I ever saw that close and shot.
Oh, okay. Obviously, you shot
both were the first time.
Well, I was thinking it looked like a SharpTail just because I couldn't see the tail of it, but it looked a little pointed in the angle. So, but I was going to mention, we were going to talk a little bit about SharpTails up there, because until we spoke and we talked about it, I had no clue that there were SharpTails in Wisconsin. I would have lost that bet.
Well, there's SharpTails in Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota. In Minnesota, we have still a huntable population of prairie chicken, albeit it's a lottery and it's very limited. Wisconsin has a very small island of prairie chicken as well that hasn't been hunted in years, but they still keep them around. They've got a nice little landscape for them down there, and I would love to see that expand. But the sharp-tailed grouse plight up here in kind of that brushland or north brushland habitat, kind of the edge of the north woods, or in Wisconsin, it's more of a barren landscape, similar to kind of Michigan, where sandy soils, very jack pine forest. There's not a lot of the oaks that grow there are scrub oaks. They're not big, tall, white, red oaks. So the tree brushland habitat is a lot more dense and sparse, and it's filled in with kind of these oak savannas and pine barren landscapes here in Wisconsin. And over the years, due to mostly human settlement and I don't want to say this is a bad thing. You know, we're here, and the more people here, we hope the more people care about things like this. But perceptions in things that we talked earlier about, you know, cutting down trees. You know, you cut down that tree, it's not coming back in your life. You got to have that memory of that tree, and it's just, you're not going to see it every day. And so those things are long term impacts. And when it comes to keeping sharptails on the landscape, and you know, bobwhite quail and all these other prairie species that were here in Wisconsin, they were here. We came in and logged off the whole entire state, and really created this landscape. Oh, now I got two sharptails in this down in the studio, or two sharptails, two short hairs in the studio.
Yeah. Okay.
So excuse if there's a little bit of playing in the background, but
That's all right.
so we cut the whole state over. They call it the big cut, or whatever it kind of term they use, but it was right around the turn of the century, from 18th to 19th, and we really created this landscape where these birds just absolutely had all kinds of space to flourish. And you look at farming and agricultural practices back then, there's a lot of small farms where a lot of fence rows, different variety of grains, a lot of small grain element to it in comparison to corn and soybean today. So there's been a huge progression in that landscape. And these birds have really kind of been forced into these pockets in Wisconsin. And sharptails are only left now, I think, out of, 200, there's like 1% or left of their original habitat. It's like, it's extremely condensed in Wisconsin. I think it's like 1.2 million acre habitat of maybe 20 million acre original existence. 200, do the research. I've got some stuff on my YouTube channel that, you know, has a little bit more facts. The Wisconsin Sharp-tailed Grouse Society has done a fantastic job promoting these birds. The real big reason I wanted to talk about this is people need to kind of have this on their radar coming up if they're at all interested in Wisconsin sharp-tailed grouse. The DNR, the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, is doing their 10-year management plan this year. So it's up for review, and the public has lots of opportunity to interact with the DNR, give comments, and hopefully impact the sharp-tail management plan going forward, because it takes prescribed burn, it takes winter cutting, it takes opening up forests, it takes working with both federal fish and wildlife game, federal forestry, county forestry, state foresters. All of that has to come together in order to really open these landscapes up, manage them for all wildlife, and really build a place where these sharptails can still exist. You know, I'm honestly really, truly afraid that if something's really not done drastically different today, in my lifetime, these birds just won't exist anymore. And that's just a thought that I can't do anything, sit on the sidelines and not do anything about. So I've got some stuff coming up with a conservation group that sells some neat products, candles and other things. And we're going to promote for a month, giveaway. I think we're going to do a live auction or a giveaway for a cutting board with emblem of the Wisconsin Sharp-tailed Grouse Society. And then all of those proceeds from that are going to go to the Wisconsin Sharp-tailed Grouse Society. There's a number of projects, from GPS tracking of sharptails to build better understanding of where they're actually utilizing the habitat, so that then they can make good, impactful habitat changes to hopefully impact the birds long term, instead of just making big blanket changes. So there's money for research projects. The management plan's coming up, and the Wisconsin Sharp-tailed Grouse Society in and of itself is kind of putting on a new front, and I really think revitalizing some of this stuff in the state. And it's really, really nice to see some of the guys my age, younger, and even a little bit older, kind of starting to take over some of the reins from guys that are, you know, older than you, Wade. And bless
Go
their
ahead and
heart,
say
man.
it.
With it. Well, I'm just saying, you know, guys that are in the 80s on boards up there
Yeah.
in Wisconsin,
Mhm.
without them, we would not have sharp-tailed grouse in this state today. Without them. So how do we take what they've done and then make sure that the next generation has
and that's,
sharp-tailed grouse in this state?
And that's the scary thing, you know. Like I said, those gentlemen to put in the time and the effort, and now it's time to pass that on to younger
Yep.
individuals like yourself or members of this society now that are kind of taking over, and hopefully they will, take it and run with it, and maybe improve on the habitat things that have been going on, and come up with some new programs. That'd be tremendous. So,
And what I think, one more thing that,
Yeah.
if you don't mind,
Sure.
I think is really unique about the SharpTail situation is, if you want to rain on my parade for this, call me out on social media, whatever. But I'm located here in Minnesota. Pheasants Forever is headquartered here. Quail Forever is headquartered here. We have a strong presence of Rough Grouse Society and all of a number of different native game bird, individual North American Grouse Partnership, all of these different groups, right? You talk to all of them, and the big buzz right now is, oh, well, we need to get the North American Grasslands Act passed, or whatever. Well, my big question to them is, you've been railing CRP for the last 50 years. Look at the graph on our native game birds for the last 50 years. Would you call that a success? I don't. I mean, we're sage grouse, all of these. Well, so what's unique about the sharp-tailed grouse is this doesn't need a CRP program. These spaces exist on public lands today. It's just a matter of actually us taking the ownership as sportsmen and women and holding our DNRs and state agencies accountable. The resources are there. We just have to actually take ownership, show the DNR and the other state agencies that we care enough about these birds. And I think a lot can be learned here across multiple different states, different game birds, but most importantly, some of the native game birds.
And you said that our listeners can find more information about this on one of your YouTube episodes, or it'll be coming out here soon. I mean,
they can check out my YouTube channel. Yeah, there's definitely a couple things on the Sharp-Tailed Grouse Society. I'll be up in the viewing blind, shooting some footage of sharp-tails dancing here in the next month.
Okay.
But more importantly, the real meat and potatoes, the people who need your help, are the Wisconsin Sharp-Tailed Grouse Society. I believe it's wisharptails.org, I want to say.
Okay.
I don't have my Google in front of me, but if
No.
you go out to Google and you Google Wisconsin Sharp-Tailed Grouse Society, you will find it.
Okay, very good. And
or reach out to me and I can point you in the right direction.
Yeah, we'll look forward to your video coming out, and then let us know what your fundraising stuff that's going to be out there too. So
yeah, I'll definitely share some of that with you guys.
So our listeners and viewers can support that.
Keep an eye out for
to do so.
Camp Candles for Conservation.
Okay.
I'm going to be doing a podcast with him here in the next couple of weeks, and in April we're going to be given the ability to win this cutting board or bid on this cutting board. Details are a little unsettled at this point, but by the time we launch it, there'll be an opportunity to get a custom cutting board from Camp Candles for Conservation for the Wisconsin Sharp-Tailed Grouse Society. All that money is going to go to habitat research for the Sharp-Tailed Grouse Society. I'm not taking any, and neither is Brendan from Camp Candles. So this is an opportunity to kind of crowdsource and fundraise for sharp-tails, and whatever helps. I mean, if we send them $100, great. If we send them 1,000, great. It's better than nothing.
Yeah,
every little bit helps.
I think when we spoke about this, we did an episode. It's been a while back, but we did an episode with the Iowa the DNR and then the Department of Forestry. But there used to be rough grouse, a fairly large population of them up in the far northeast corner of Iowa.
Yep. And the driftless area.
Up in that area, it's a little more mountainous. It's got a lot of the topography. Obviously, is suited for. It's mostly woods. Up and down hills, and so apparently there was quite a. And I have talked with a lot of older gentlemen who have told me that when in their youth growing up, that was pretty common for them to be able to go and hunt those. But over the years, as you know, the trees matured and the landscape changed, and that habitat just wasn't there to support those populations. And And the state of Iowa has some public ground up there that they own where they are clear cutting it, and they're trying to do what they can to maintain and to bring those populations back, or at least sustain the populations that are there. But they mentioned to me the same issue, as people that see them cutting down mature timber and just basically looking like they've ravaged this area of the land is tough. It's kind of hard for everybody to understand, but they're doing it, and they kind of take a few acres.
It's like going out and buying a brand new car, right?
Yeah,
and then deciding which junkyard you're going to take it to crush it up and spit it out. I mean, there's still way more use for it than a crushed up cube of a car. Like, you shouldn't take it to the quote unquote junkyard or look at it that way. Trees grow back, and deer and all these other critters really use that young successional forest. And before we were here and saying, hey, put that wildfire out, or hey, put that fence row in and put that, burn road in. And these places did have a lightning strike and burn 100,000 acres. And these changes on the landscape were there and done by Mother Nature. So it's one of these things I struggle with too. Like, if I owned a 100-year-old oak stand that I had a real personal attachment to, the day those trees came down would be a day that would change my life. I mean, it is what it is. So yeah. I get it, but at some point, there has to be a happy medium, both with how we manage rough grouse, how we manage sharp-tailed grouse. The thing that concerns me the most is with these native game birds. I'm not a biologist. I'm not an expert. I'm a guy that spends a lot of time outdoors and tries to connect the dots. And it seems to me as if the native game birds, once gone, they're extremely hard to get back. Missouri, one of these states that had rough grouse, they tried for years to get rough grouse back through timber management, translocation. It hasn't really worked out really that well.
Right.
So it's one of those things where you kind of hit a point where you hit the event horizon. There's no coming back. And I don't know if nothing against pheasants forever, or Iowa and all the pheasants down there, but you have to wonder at some point, when do you stop shifting the focus from a bird like the pheasant and start shifting a lot of our focus on our native game birds, because the pheasant's only here to replace the native game birds that are no longer here. And that's just I don't know. It's one of those things that gets me every time I really start thinking about it, and it motivates me to have these conversations and help groups out like Minnesota and Wisconsin Sharp-Tailed Grouse Society. So I haven't done anything with the Michigan Sharp-Tailed Grouse Society, but one of these days in the future, I will have that connection. I want to learn more about those birds as well, because it's kind of like a do or die situation on a lot of these species. Sage grouse, lesser prairie chickens just got listed. And again, my comment earlier, 50 years of CRP. Is that really a track record that you're willing to hang your hat on? Because I would argue that it's not that great of a track record, and we need to look at ways to do things differently. And I mean, it's not working for a lot of farmers to lock their land up in a CRP contract. It's not very friendly. How can we change that so that people are willing to put out native grassland tracts and stop this postage stamp and island spaces of native grasslands and start to build more bridges and connect these pieces so we could see some of these birds flourish again? It's without some planning and forethought, it's just going to continue to do the same old thing. And right now, that trajectory is something I can't personally swallow at the end of the day.
So, and we talked about, well, you mentioned you have dogs in your studio there, and of course,
I think they finally went upstairs.
Well, of course, that dog element is so important, and it's usually is the reason that guys like me and probably you have got into doing what we're doing. Was we had a dog that, and I think you saw the Sweet Lou story.
I did, yeah.
And there's a perfect example of a dog that really changed my life and my lifestyle.
I could relate a lot to that story.
Yeah,
and the impact that one of my dogs has had on my life.
And I know that what that dog that you're talking about is that dog that you've kind of set out on this quest to try to hunt as many species of upland birds as you can over that dog. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not this big published, hey, I'm out there railing away on Instagram about this personal goal I have, but it's more of a, hey, I got home, I guess maybe about 5 years ago. It's somewhere around when I learned what Mearns quail were. And I went down to Kansas and came back, and I'm going, January. It's like, man, the season's over. I'm going through those season blues, and I'm going, Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona, New Mexico, there's North Carolina, I think, has a woodcock season that goes pretty late. Like, there's bird hunting here. And it came out of, honestly, a rejection of fishing. You get done with bird hunting up here in the year, and like, it's there. What else do you have to look forward to? So I was, at the time, I was still doing some ice fishing, and nothing against ice fishing, but I just have a problem with ice fishing or 6, 8 inch, 10-inch hole. Like, I 2-foot rod. I like to cast, and that's where I get my big passion out of fishing is really kind of actively pursuing them. And when you have to wear that many layers, you have to drill that many holes, and you have to carry that much crap just to stay warm, and so your ice doesn't, line doesn't freeze up, I'm out. So I wanted to figure out how I could spend more time with my dogs in the winter time and not be socked in with snow like we currently are. But so I started researching like any guy does, just has free time. Hey, this thought pops in, start a whiteboard. And all of a sudden I have a whiteboard full of every North American game bird species that is in the lower 48. And I'm like, this is possible. I mean, I didn't go, hey, this is doable, we're going to do it, but I'm like, this is not an impossible feat to think of. And what really motivated me probably about 2 years ago, obviously, was this big change. I found a lot of joy in dogs. And all of a sudden, my older short hair, who I not, it's not the dog, it was me, but she's not the finest, best broke dog but I love to hunt with her. Her passion, her just personality changed my life. And to her, it's this honor thing. It's like, I want to give that back to you. And it's hard to talk about sometimes without choking up. But I don't feel as if I can ever repay that favor to her. I don't know what I would do in my life without dogs. And I don't know what I would do in my life if I couldn't chase birds. And without that dog, none of that would have came together. I mean, I owe my daughter a ton because she pushed me super hard to get a dog. And without her, Rebel would have never came into my life. But after that, if I would have had a negative experience with Rebel, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So to see her start to be in these different landscapes, and that's another bird, another bird, another bird. We knocked off, I think, 5, 6 bird species this year, and it was just the snowball starts, and it's like, okay, well, now we only have this many, and I've got 2 quail left on my North American Slam. Is that Pheasant Fest? Hey, do I have to start pimping you I know you're out in Nevada. Like, you got valley quail and California quail out there. Hey, yeah, come on out in October. I mean, if the stars keep aligning, yeah, we'll continue this quest. Rebel's going to be going on her 8th season this year, and very healthy for her age and for how many miles and abuse that I put her through. And we'll keep knocking. I got my brother on the rope out in Colorado, and I told him, I said, well, when you doing elk camp this year? Are you doing an early muzzleloader camp? Are you going to come out? Nope, I'm not coming out and paying for an elk tag, but I think I might chase some dusky grouse, and I don't think the ptarmigan are too terribly far from one of those spots you like to elk hunt. So can we knock off 2 of those in September before our grouse season comes out? And, it's just that if I could just run dogs all day long and chase my dogs and work with other people so that they have a dog that they want to chase behind all day long, I would be a happy man. So everything I do in life is how can I continue to do that more and more and more every day over the course of the year.
And that's
And if
been
I could give up my summer fishing, I would. I really would. I love it. I love it. But at the end of the day, I don't get the gratification out of it that I get from working with dogs. It's a very special bond that people have. It's man's best friend. We've been by their side for 1,000+ years, and there's a lot of richness in life that comes from seeing you or other people have that relationship and achieve a goal with a dog.
and I could say, as you probably can, that my dog or dogs are the only creature that's probably seen the best shot that I ever made and the worst shot that I ever made. You know, and I've hunted with a lot of buddies and other people, but probably those two instances, it was the dog I was hunting with that got to partake in that, and it was funny because Lou, occasionally when I would have an off day, and miss what probably should have been our an easy bird that he had worked very hard to point for me. He would always kind of turn his head and give you that little kind of like, what the heck, man, come on, what's going on? And I always used to tickle me, but yeah, the dogs are for me, and for you, I know, are just, that's it. I mean, that's really my pursuit is to get those dogs out as often as I can, because they deserve, for what they do and how they do it, the more opportunities I give them. And, at the same time, you're always thinking about, well, I'm giving these dogs the opportunity, but really they're giving the opportunity back to me. I mean, they're giving back to me, even though I think I'm putting them in the field, because, they're getting these opportunities. So, but yeah, dogs are wonderful, and all breeds of dogs. That I've had several different kinds of dogs, and they've all been great in their respect. And, and the great thing about doing podcasting like we are, and we were doing a video series called SharpTails a few years ago, was just the people that you meet. Like, if it hadn't been for podcasting, I may not have ever met you. And
Oh, absolutely.
and, we would never have maybe got the opportunity to just talk and share information and share stories, and so from that standpoint, it's tremendously gratifying to be able to meet people all over who mostly have that same passion that we do for our dogs. Might be a different kind of dog, might be a different breed, but they have that same passion, and it's kind of fun to share that with them. And that goes clear across the ocean, because, as you know, we ended up in Ireland hunting with some guys who had English setters there, and they felt the same way about their dogs as we do, which was kind of fun. So it's a universal thing, and that's why we do it. When you went on I know you've hunted several different states, specifically
Yeah, I had a
Montana.
dream season.
Yeah. I want to do that. See, I'm thinking, man, that the clock is really ticking on me, and if I'm ever going to do it, I better get this done. And I have these opportunities. I talk to we have a friend in Montana that says, "Hey, man, come on out. I got birds out my backyard here. I got public ground. And they got 4 or 5 species of birds. And when your dog goes on point, you're not sure what you're going to get. Well, I can't even imagine that. I'm going, I can't imagine that. But so, yeah, it's fun.
There were moments in Montana this year where it was like, oh, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pheasants get out of this, thicker little strip in a coulee, and it's like, okay, get the dog another 40 yards up on the edge of the coulee, and we'll start running into SharpTails again. And it's very, yeah, I have not experienced that too often in life. And Montana was definitely the pinnacle of that in the last few years for me. It was amazing how many birds were
So
out.
I suspect you're going back.
It's definitely so. I'm torn. I'm very torn, because I have a feeling this year it's going to come down to a little bit more of a tighter financial book than it was last year, and I'm definitely I'm busy. I'm busy this year from a fishing standpoint. I'm busy working with a couple dogs, and then I'm also busy getting ready scouting. And I think one of the things a lot of guys don't understand when they look at a guy like me is they don't know what I do when they're not here. They come out for the day and they see this tiny window of this life, put on a really nice show for them. Maybe we get into some birds, maybe we don't, but they don't know that I spent 20 days out in the woods in August looking for
Right.
the big groups of birds. And I spent, another 20 days out in April and May working my dogs on the woodcock and the grouse, trying to figure out where there were birds left after the winter this year. So it's one of those things where I'm really busy at this point, and something might have to give this fall, at least from my calendar for hunting. And after going to Montana and a couple other states this year, I'm very toss up on, hey, if I can get one solid month in and slightly into February, so maybe not even early January in the middle of February, if I can do a full month down in Arizona, you got me sold. I love the birds, the different types of birds, the native grouse and all that stuff up in Montana. Fantastic. But my season starts here in mid-September, and their season starts at the beginning of September. So it leaves a 2-week window. And if I rob Peter to pay Paul out in Montana to take away from scouting here, I have to make that up in other parts of my life. And I don't know. It's one of those things. I love quail so much that Arizona left a really big impact on my life. Having 3 different species of quail and 3 different types of covey rises, all within close enough proximity that if you wanted to hustle, you could do it in a day. I have a hard time with that, especially given that I can do that in January and not see snow. So the plan is to be back in Montana this year to start the season, to run dogs for maybe a week tops, and then transition back into the grouse woods. But this whole valley quail, California quail thing came up too now. So I'm weighing some options. I'm going to be traveling. I will be hunting somewhere on September 1st. So I've got invites out to Kansas for prairie chickens in September. I don't know.
So I'm picturing the whiteboard right now. So what species are left on the big whiteboard that aren't checked off yet?
So, dusky grouse, blue grouse. I'm not one of these guys that's going to subcategorize blue grouse into the sooty grouse and then the 2 species of sooty grouse. If I can connect with a Rocky Mountain blue grouse, that's going to check that box for me, at least for now. And with Rebel, maybe subspecies will get added later. Ptarmigan, valley quail, California quail, I guess you could call mountain grouse as well, so like mountain roughies. I know I'm missing a couple more obscure ones right now I'm not thinking of, but it's we're kind of on that backside of the hump. Ptarmigan, and I did sage grouse, sharptail, Huns, which Huns is, they're not a native, so I'll take it. I'll add it to the list, but it wasn't as important to me as the native prairie grouse species. Sure. And then I did the Merns, Gambles, and scaled quail this fall. So it's one of those things where the whiteboard has gotten erased, and it needs to be redrawn now. And there needs a few more boxes through it. And now things like an elegant quail. People don't really know what they are. I think I'm pronouncing it right, but they're from Mexico. You have to cross the border and go south to get those. It's like, what else is there?
I don't know that I would take that on right now, but maybe
not right now. I definitely lots more research before we would step south of the border, at least at this point, given the climate of things. But anyways, 2 years ago, Wade, I would have never even have thought about it. And I owe it all to Rebel. And all I want to do is honor her as best as possible, because the only thing I get to take home, like, I will have to put that dog in the ground at some point. I'll be burying, a shovel will be hand. I'll be crying my ass off. Yep. I'll be thinking the world's over, and I'll have to put that dog in the ground. But I want the memories. I want the memories out of it. I want the experiences out of it.
And you always have that.
Exactly.
because I've been through that. So you'll always have that. But I tell you, Brian, it's been delightful talking to you tonight, and I know we had a few challenges getting to this point to get to discuss our
Hey,
our lives, I guess, and where we are now with the.
We've had more of an opportunity to get to know each other.
There you go, there you go, and maybe we'll get to do something with regard to your podcast in the future. I hope we.
I'm coming down. I'm gonna make plans. I'm gonna come down. We're gonna make a day out of it. You guys aren't that far, and I'll make sure I can knock off a couple other things on that trip. But
cool.
After all the technical issues we've had here, I think it's just the best thing. If I'm involved, the technological glitch follows me everywhere. I'm just driving down, and we can make this happen.
We'll make sure that we do, and again, thanks a lot, and
I
good luck.
appreciate you
Good
guys
luck.
having me
Good
on.
luck on the season coming up in the fall, and the fishing coming up, and hopefully anybody that is interested in checking you out and hiring you as a guide, they can easily find you out there on YouTube and other things. So that's great. So we'll be back next week, and in the meantime, just make sure if you get a chance, subscribe to the podcast and send in those questions as we spoke earlier, and we will catch you next time.